Welcome back to another News of the Week episode, and we actually still have about 2 hours at the time of this recording before the first game of the CCL quarterfinal first leg action between the Columbus Crew and Monterrey is going to kick off. As tonight, it seems like CCL action is going to be a little bit later than usual, and by the time that I do the review for the CCL review, it will be a little bit later and kind of right around the time when I tends to do the review for the Saturday action, where most of the game usually conclude around 12:30 a.m. Eastern time, 9:30 p.m. my time here in Pacific time, and it seems like it's going to be kind of, I wouldn't say a late night in terms of doing a CCL review, but definitely a later night than usual in terms of the CCL review that I've been doing so far this season, talking about the CONCACAF Champions League. But in terms of news of the week and some of the news that happened in the past week, well, Austin FC, obviously the big headlines for this week for them is that they got their first victory in their club history, and there's definitely a lot of congratulation that is going on around the league, congratulating Austin FC, a first of hopefully many more wins that they will get throughout this season and also in their club history. But there was also a headline that kind of gone under the rug, and that people actually didn't realize that Thomas Pochettino was not available in that game against the Colorado Rapids. Now, originally I thought maybe Pochettino might have picked up a knock in that first game against LAFC, but it seems like it was just a healthy scratch and he didn't really pick up a knock. And then I have heard news that it seems like Thomas Pochettino had some issue in terms of registration, and that the league even said that he had some potential administrative issue of him being at Austin FC, and I thought this was gonna be like a Blaise Matuidi situation. And if you're Austin FC, this could definitely be a bad sign in terms of the whole mess that we had with the Blaise Matuidi situation with Inter Miami just a couple of months ago. Well, thankfully, the good news is it seems like it's no longer an issue, and that it seems like Thomas Pochettino is going to be available to play in the next match. And speaking of the Blaise Matuidi situation, I know the league have basically found guilty toward Inter Miami, knowing that they of course break the rules in terms of the whole situation with them signing Blaise Matuidi to an illegal TAM contract, but I still haven't got any news what exactly the punishment is going to be. But knowing the fact that it's Inter Miami and that it's a team owned by David Beckham, I bet Don Gabber is just going to give him a slap on the wrist, and that's pretty much it. And probably, I would say, maybe the punishment is just going to be like maybe they won't have like a first round super draft pick heading into next year, or maybe a second round super draft pick, and then people are going to be pissed off the fact that the punishment wasn't hard enough. But hey, this is what happened when you of course are trying to punish a team that they're one of the more remarkable team, and one of the team that pretty much the league wants to talk about nonstop. And it doesn't also help the fact that the team that owns that team that is about to get punished is a huge friend of the current MLS commissioner, that is Don Gabber. Now, speaking of Austin FC, well, unfortunately there is some bad news in terms of injury issue. Well, depending on how you look at it, I mean, you could maybe look at this to be something that could take a hit in terms of their depth chart. Well, in fact, that of course is actually the case, because two of their guys in their depth chart, that is Ben Sweat and Ulises Segura, probably is not going to be coming back for their inaugural season, with Ben Sweat unfortunately suffer a torn ACL, while Ulises Segura is undergoing a knee surgery, and I don't know exactly how long is he going to recover from that knee surgery. But either way, it seemed like both of these guys are going to be out for the season. And again, I think as much as this might not sound like it's a bad loss for Austin FC, because both of these guys are really just kind of depth players, and they're pretty much belong in the near bottom part of the depth chart. In case if Austin FC does go with an injury crisis, they better hope it doesn't get as worse as it gets to a point where they might not have a lot of depth in terms of the spot that Ben Sweat and Ulises Segura currently they occupy. But it seems like that is not the case. I think they still have some good depth pieces, even though they lose two of these guys. That is also part of a pretty good depth pieces that they had in the fullbacks and midfield position. Now, moving on in terms of next news, and probably the biggest news from this week, is that Toronto FC has officially announced that they have signed Venezuelan international Yeferson Soteldo from Santos. Now, I kind of mentioned this a little bit yesterday in the review where, if TFC is going to try to come back from that 3-1 deficit that they suffered against Cruz Azul yesterday, and they have to do it going down to the Azteca and trying to overcome that, they better hope Yeferson Soteldo will be ready for them, because from what I heard from this guy, he is definitely a very dynamic player, and some would even compare him to kind of like a Sebastian Javinko, where he's relatively short, but he's also very fast on the wing area, and also has a lot of good creativity in his game. And the fact that they also paid $6 million for him, they also hope that of course is the case, and also make him as their third DP. But if he does be available for that game against Cruz Azul in the first leg, which will be very interesting to see. It's about 1 week now before that game, of course, start. I'm not quite sure will he be ready in time for that game, but if he does, then maybe TFC does have a chance to potentially come back from it. But that also depending on if Yeferson Soteldo will make an instant impact and kind of make an Emmanuel Reynoso kind of instant impact, where he's automatically an instant hit as soon as he plays his first game with TFC. Now, TFC also signed another player, as they have signed Ale Gator from University of Florida. Now, apparently, I think this might be a replacement for Alejandro Pozuelo, because knowing the fact that Pozuelo is starting to head into his 30s, and he might be going into the same route that Sebastian Javinko could be heading in, where in a couple of years I think TFC potentially is going to sell Alejandro Pozuelo. I think Gator is going to be the guy that is going to replace him. I mean, from what I heard from this kid, he is a very young talented kid, probably one of the hottest prospect that is coming to MLS. And from what I also hear from him, he kind of that Alejandro Pozuelo type of player, where not only the fact that he showed that killer instinct in terms of scoring goals in the big game, but also he put some very good sharp passes to his teammate and has a lot of creative ability in that number 10 role. Now, the only thing that I've also heard Gator might need to fix in terms of his game is definitely his composure, and also his also needs to kind of control his emotion, because from what I've seen in his time with the University of Florida, he tends to kind of be like that Luis Suarez type of player, where there was one time he actually got a 6-game suspension because he bite a player, and there was also a time where he decided to pretty much kick the ball into the supporter section after a big win that Florida, of course, got against their hated rival Florida State. And then there's also times where he tends to love to perform the dark arts, and that every time when he tried to chomp at defenders into the box, he maybe goes down a little bit too early and pretty much perform the dark arts like that. So that's something that maybe I think he needs to fix. Well, maybe the part where he needs to do like the dark arts, because after all, I feel like diving, as much as it's something that we hate to see players to do, it's kind of part of the game, and that's why it's called the dark arts in the first place. But something that he needs to definitely change is the fact that he needs to change his attitude, and also the fact that if he decided to bite a player in MLS, it's not just going to be a 6-game suspension that he suffered in college, but more like maybe a 10-game or 12-game suspension that he's going to suffer in MLS, and a hefty fine that he's going to receive. Now, I've also heard that TFC decided to sign this guy on Gator Allocation Money. Now, apparently, I think this is a new currency that the league basically introduced, and that I'm not quite sure if the league is going to basically say that it's okay, and that we might not have another Matuidi situation where the league is going to instantly say that, yeah, this, when you sign this guy from Florida and you sign him on Gator Allocation Money, even though we said before that we accepted that currency, now we're going to take it back and say that he's actually supposed to be a DG player, and DG, by the way, stands for Designated Gator in that case. So yeah, let's see whether or not if the league is going to maybe once again investigate this situation, but I'm pretty sure that probably is not the case, and that TFC is very certain that they're not going to have a same situation that Inter Miami has with Matt Twitty, where their new signing could be investigated because they signed him on an illegal GAM contract. Now, another signing that happened from this week is that the LA Galaxy have signed French center backs Sega Koulibaly, and the only thing I got to say with this is that, Sega Koulibaly, welcome to the Galaxy and welcome to the merry-go-round that is known as the Galaxy backline, because I swear, I'm going to go over in terms of the over and under that the Galaxy are probably going to have 5 defender there that have played in that center back spot throughout the season, because it just feels like it's been pretty much a revolving door in terms of that back line, and especially in that center back position in the past couple of seasons. And I know I said before that the Galaxy have tried their best to basically sign anyone to hope to fix their back line issue that has really plagued them for the past couple of seasons. And unfortunately, heading into this season, it seems like that back line issue is still going to be a problem. So we'll see whether or not if he can, of course, be part of this backline and maybe solve the issue that they've been having for the past couple of years. Although, from what I've seen with this guy, he used to play for Nancy, which currently is in the second division of Ligue 1. So, there's not really a lot of players from the second division usually come to MLS and they can be decent. I mean, I think the only player I can think of is Debasi from Minnesota, where with Debasi, he actually played in League before his team Amiens got relegated into the second division of League. So technically, I don't think he was part. He was part of one season with that team that got relegated, but I think he was also part of the season when Amiens was still in League before they had that relegation season where they got relegated to the second division. And this guy has pretty much been in the second division, and he's even spent time on loan with a third division side in French football. Now, Orlando City is negotiating with Barnsley, and they're negotiating with them because they want to record Daryl DK before the promotional playoff. Now, I'm kind of surprised that both of these teams are in a negotiation stage, because I swear that there was a clause there that, if Orlando City want to record Daryl DK, they can basically do it before the promotional playoffs. And, I guess maybe originally when they negotiate this, even though they kind of put that clause in, I don't think Barnsley realized that they were going to be in a promotional playoffs situation as they seems to find themselves in. Now, that being said, it is also clear that Orlando City desperately need Daryl DK back, because when you saw these first 2 games that they have played, it's pretty clear that they really miss Daryl DK and really miss a true number 9 that can of course bang in the goals for them. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not if they can of course get him back. And for Barnsley, I'm pretty sure they're not going to try to accept this recall, and that they want to hold on to Daryl DK before this promotional playoffs, because DK, unless you have been living under a rock, he has been lighting it up in the championship right now, and he's lighting up so much that he is definitely getting some consideration that he could maybe be the future U.S. men's national team number 9 player, and could be the replacement for Clint Dempsey in that spot. Now, obviously, I know it's still early, and we've seen before where players that might eventually replace where Dempsey used to play in that number 9 spot in the U.S. men's national team. They kind of flop after that. But I have a feeling, with how good Daryl DK has been for Barnsley, and especially there's now teams in the Premier League that is willing to pay Orlando City $20 million to able to get to him. There's no doubt that I think he is definitely a very decent player. And again, Orlando City are desperately trying to recall him back because they really need him, and that it will be also interesting to see when they do recall him back, and if he does be part of this Orlando City side again, how long before they're going to have to sell him to another club. Because I know in the summer transfer window there's going to be a ton of Premier League club and even tons of European club is going to be calling at Orlando City and basically spending about $20 to $30 million in order to take Daryl DK off their hands. But speaking of striker, there's also now a report suggests that Tati Castellanos actually says that he wants to force his move to Palmeiras and is actually asking NYCFC he doesn't want to be used anymore. Now, this is actually only according to one report that I heard about, and I'm not quite sure if this report actually is true or not. But yeah, this is kind of interesting to see Tati Castellano doesn't want to be part of NYCFC, and in some way I kind of understand because knowing the fact that if he is potentially is going to make that jump to Europe, I know going to Palmeiras might not sound like a move that could be a step forward for him to make a jump to Europe, but there's no doubt that Palmeiras, we talk about how they are considered one of the biggest club in South America and a club that have repeatedly compete in the Copa Libertadores and also one of the contender of winning that competition. There's no doubt that Tati Castellanos wants to maybe go to there and maybe even perform well in the Copa Libertadores and even win the competition, and then he will of course get to the move to Europe. Now, obviously, City Football Group doesn't want to see it that way, and they kind of want to hold on to Tati Castellanos before it eventually sell him off to Europe. I mean, if he does go to Palmeiras, I'm assuming NYCFC is still going to basically have a clause where you can of course get Tati Castellanos, but Palmeiras you need to basically have like a 70% sell on fee, and that when you sell him off to Europe, we're also going to get a big sum of money part of that deal too. But obviously, I know NYCFC and especially City Football Group doesn't want to see that happen. They want the 100% sell on fees, and that they're trying their best to try to hold on to Tati Castellanos. And also, as I mentioned before, how thin this NYCFC attack already is. If they lose Castellanos, that could be a huge issue in terms of that number 9 spot, and that they do have a backup in Aber playing that number 9 spot, but so far I haven't seen Aber actually started any of the game. Well, actually, it's because he's still recovered from that torn ACL that he suffered in September. But you're really gambling the fact that if you do sell Tati Castellanos, you hope that Aber will be back to the form that he was a couple years ago and banging the goals, and not be at the form that he was last season, where he just seems to have that good old striker curse where you're just not allowed to score a goal no matter how much you try going forward. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is that Charlotte FC have announced that they will be playing on an artificial turf after the stadium that they're going to be playing, Bank of America Stadium, will be converting their grass turf to artificial turf. Now, as much as I know some people are not happy about this is not a big surprise, considering the fact that when you look at the 5 other team that currently is playing in an NFL stadium, well, technically 4 other team, because Nashville SC is going to be moving out of Nissan Stadium, I think in a year or 2 times when they have that new stadium built. But pretty much I think 3 of the 4 stadiums that an MLS team is sharing their venue with their city, the NFL team, all of them currently play on an artificial turf. And I guess the reason why that is the case is because it might be a little bit easier in terms of switching a football dimension on an artificial turf to a soccer dimension on an artificial turf compared to on a grass turf. And also, when you have a games that basically take place, especially late into the season when the NFL season and the MLS season is basically going together, well, that's going to really take a lot of toll in terms of the turf, and hence this is why a lot of these teams that might be sharing the venue with their city NFL team wants to go with an artificial turf, because at least you don't usually get that tear, and where with maybe 2 events that happen around the same week as you would see on a grass turf that they currently have. So again, I know people are not happy about this, because MLS teams should be playing on a grass turf, and the fact that some of these teams still play in NFL stadiums seems kind of MLS 1.0 kind of era. But I guess this is what happened with Charlotte FC decided that they're just going to play at Bank of America Stadium, and that I always find it kind of odd, the fact that they still haven't even thought about maybe building their own soccer specific stadium. And that's before when they had that whole PSL fiasco where they decided to be the only MLS team to force their season ticket holder to pay for personal seat license in order to, of course, buy season tickets to go to watch their game. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is that Jesse Marsch is report that he is going to be replacing Julian Nagelsmann as the manager of RB Leipzig. So Nagelsmann, I heard from yesterday, he of course is going to be the new manager of Bayern Munich, and it seems like RB Leipzig is trying to maybe call in a replacement within kind of the whole Red Bulls kind of franchise, and they decided to get another former Red Bulls coach in Jesse Marsch and kind of promote him from being in that spot for RB Salzburg and now being kind of the head coach of RB Leipzig. And I wonder if that is kind of the model that the Red Bulls franchise decided to use. I wonder in a couple of years, or maybe sooner, they're going to there could be a situation that RB Salzburg might be calling Gerhard Struber as their next head coach of the team. Now, obviously, I don't think it's going to happen this season because Struber have just become the new head coach of the New York Red Bulls, and that means RB Salzburg probably might have to look for someone that is not within the Red Bulls franchise. But it's great to see that Jesse Marsch is able to take charge of now becoming one of the team that have been successful in Germany, although not in a very good way. If you talk to a lot of people down there in Germany, and especially Bundesliga fans, have always hated how RB Leipzig, in terms of their rise in terms of the last couple of years being a team that basically was in the 4th division and all of a sudden being at the top division because of this whole Red Bulls kind of cast that kind of helped them to get to that part. But still, this is definitely I think this is probably the best job that I've seen an American head coach has been able to take charge of a big team. And I think for Jesse Marsch, I said it before and I say it again, I feel like in a couple of years time, when Greg Berhalter decided to step down from his position for the U.S. men's national team, Jesse Marsch clearly should be the next one that is in consider, and he's probably right now the best American head coach right now that we currently have, and even better than what Greg Berhalter is in with the U.S. men's national team. And now moving on, in terms of the next news, is that Chicharito has officially won the Player of the Week for the 2nd week in a row, which is not a big surprise because I've said before with the Player of the Week award, as long as you're able to score a hat trick, for sure you're going to be in the Player of the Week award. And in case if there is weeks where maybe there's 2 or 3 players that score a hat trick, well, the rules in terms of the Player of the Week award will most likely give it to the player that is kind of more of the big name kind of player, and the players that will grab headlines that is within MLS that's going to win Player of the Week. So even if there was another player that scored a hat trick this weekend, there's no doubt that I don't think he's going to win it, consider Chicharito is more of a big name kind of headline player. I mean, unless if that other player is Joseph Martinez or even Carlos Vela, then it gets a little bit tricky in terms of how they decided to award the Player of the Week. But since this week the only guy that scored a hat trick was Chicharito, he automatically basically wins the Player of the Week, because that's how the Player of the Week usually awards the player that score a hat trick during the specific match week. Now, the latest power rankings that has happened from this week, and again, I'm going to only go with the top 10 in terms of the latest power rankings that the MLS League website decided to release. And another reason why I said that I only decided to put the top 10 and not actually look at the remaining power rankings is that the remaining power rankings basically look like some CONCACAF level of shithousery, where it seems like there's teams down there near the bottom half that have either dropped all the way down to the bottom half because they lost a game during the weekend on the road, and then there's teams that was in the bottom half the previous week basically rise all the way near the top half of the power rankings just because they won a game at home. Like I've seen even some teams that have like lost 10 spot because they lost a game on the road, and some team that won a game at home and they move up into 10 spot, and I just feel like that is absolutely ridiculous of how if that's the way to judge how the power rankings actually work, no wonder why a lot of people aren't paying attention to it. But either way, in terms of the top 10 for this week, we actually had a new number 1 in LAFC getting the spot over the Columbus Crew, who, you know, for Columbus, because they didn't play this week, you knew that eventually they were going to drop down one spot, because knowing LAFC, even if they did get a draw against Seattle in that game, I think paying those so-called MLS experts basically said that, you know, that was a good draw for LAFC, consider how depleted their squad is, so that's why we decided to move them up one spot compared to Columbus now have dropped down to one spot. For Seattle, of course, they remains the same in third place, while New England, they moved up one spot with the Timbers also doing the same thing in the fifth spot. And Philly, who was at the fourth spot last week, they dropped down 2 spots from this week after that loss against Inter Miami. Then Atlanta United also moved up 2 spot after that win against Chicago Fire. Sporting KC remains the same spot that they were last week, and then Orlando City actually dropped 2 spots from last week, despite the fact that they got that 1-1 draw against SKC, and I even said that I think if you look at that game, Orlando City is probably going to be the happier side to come out with a 1-1 draw. And then the biggest mover from this week is actually the LA Galaxy, and this is actually wrong. It's not minus 5 spots that they dropped. They actually gained 5 spots to now move into the top 10 spot of the latest power rankings. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of this week's news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of some of the news from this week, and as always, if there's any news I didn't mention from this previous week, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.